Welcome to Under the Fringe. We are your hosts, Andy Yablonsky and Julie Babin, two interior designers with almost 50 years of combined experience. And while we love design, our passion has really become helping the next generation of designers struggle less, earn more, and create more freedom in their lives. We offer a whole host of support options to help you create the structures you need to really thrive and grow. More to come on that at the end of the show. So I think that if we are looking at soft skills versus the hard skills, that those are going to be the more important things to focus on, right? As Julie was saying, it's that personality. If you are somebody that maybe loves horoscopes, hiring somebody that loves horoscopes might be actually a good fit for you because that could be a playful point of interaction. And I think we talk about this a lot, right? Alignment. This is a word that I love and use constantly, and it applies to so many places. But when you're interviewing this person, and I think we were talking about this earlier, it's if you were in a corporate job and you had employees or not employees, coworkers that you didn't like, this is literally your company. There's no room for people that you don't like, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's really about finding the good fit. And also, I would say one of the more important pieces of a negotiation would be that if you hire someone, I mean, California is an at-will state, so that means that someone can quit or be fired for any reason. There's no substantive, unless they're in a union or something, you don't have to really document. You can just say, we're letting you go, and that's it. Just think about what wouldn't be a reason, like, if you don't like somebody and you're not in an at-will state, like, that is but they're performing their job, like, it gets a little trickier why you wanna but, like, if somebody isn't a good fit, if they're not the right culture for your office, this probationary period, this 3 months where, like, it's this 90-day
Hmm.
period where somebody comes in and you get a chance to work with them and then decide whether there's an actual offer on the table
Yep.
is a great way to understand whether or not they'd fit. And the other phrase that I've liked, besides Marie Forleo's hire before you're ready is hire slowly. And
So true.
so you hire that person with this probationary period, and then you've got 90 days to decide whether they are a good fit, and you're finding alignment within, their demeanor, their work ethic, their energetic level. We all have bad days, but if somebody's consistently coming in and it's like a bad day all the time, that's a
Hmm.
no for me, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think we're like giving you guys the permission. Obviously, someone has to have skills too, but just give yourself the permission to, like, if for some reason you, in your gut, you just don't like them, even if they are very skilled or very qualified, but
yes,
your gut is
yes.
saying in the interview, even right off the bat, you might look back on this and go, "Oh, well, I knew it in the interview." And now you're working with them and you're going, "Oh man, why did I get myself into this?" It's because your intuition was telling you. So I think a lot of what we're saying is like we're giving you the permission to pay attention. I think pay attention to your intuition. Like, do
Yep.
not ignore that. It's usually always right.
Oh, it's
And
always
maybe
right.
the your intuition is like a softer volume and you just don't hear it, but if you do learn to pay attention and the volume gets a little louder and you do learn to um, trust your intuition, I think almost all the time my intuition's always right.
Yep. Yep. I
Maybe
would agree.
most of the time. And so we're giving you that permission. Obviously, someone needs to be, mostly qualified. It can't just be like, oh, we have so much in common, but they can't do anything.
Well,
um,
I think I actually have another friend who did hire someone based on personality, and they were like, they're so great. And what happened was this person sort of inflated their skill set a little bit. And while they did have like some of these skills, they were only marginally good at them. And the office is a fast-moving office, it's a successful firm, and they didn't this woman just couldn't keep up. And
Mhm.
so in the
Yeah, so you
end
do need to know, like, someone's work ethic as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and, like, the pace, like you were saying.
yep. And
I
so
like the idea of, like, the 90 days being called, like, something different than probationary, because that makes me feel like I'm out on parole. But, like, yeah, like a 90-day, like, get to know you.
it's like the 90-day fiancé.
Mm.
Do you take that step into the wedding after the 90 days, or you're like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I also like, and I've noticed this, that for whatever reason with interior designers, we do the regular job interview thing and then you just go into hiring them. But a lot of, like, I know a lot of restaurant culture, and when you're a chef and you're moving to a new restaurant, they have you work there for free for a whole day or more. Like some of the really nice restaurants will have you, they call it stage, but they have you work, like if it's the French Laundry or somewhere really, high level, they might have you do free work for like a whole week. But either way, they do have you come in and actually be a part of a real shift. And I always thought that was weird that our industry didn't do anything like that. And I was at the hospitality design conference in Las Vegas, and one of the hotel designers there was talking about, what he'll do, and I want to start doing this, is he'll have a potential hire create a Pinterest board for him, and he'll just say, okay, create a Pinterest board and like design me a hotel. And so just think of different ways that you can engage people, even just in the interviewing process, to see what they're like, what do they think is funny, how fast are they, how much are their ideas aligned with yours? Can you work with their where they're at? Like, oh well, it's okay, but I could make them better. Or no, no, it's really not gonna work.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, again, we liken a lot of things to dating in our industry because these are relationships that are long. And uh, some of this is like you have to have the time to get to know somebody. Like an hour interview isn't enough time. And even if you bring them back for a second interview, that's often not quite enough. But like
Hmm.
giving yourself that, could you come in, like even just paying them hourly for a week, like come in for a week, let's see what you can do, come in for 2 days and let's see what you can do. Um, because maybe they're in demand and they have other jobs that they need to decide about, but you have really hit it off or something. I mean, I think, the asking someone to work for free is a little bit of a tricky wicket. I don't know that California state laws actually allow for that. Volunteer is a different thing, but um, but I do think that
You could give them like a 3 hour work exercise.
yeah, I mean, just there's a few things that you would want to understand. And I mean, I've also like again somebody that had great skills but could the designer's brand, right? Like
Right.
they can draw, they can pick tile, um, they can even talk to clients, but then, in sort of looking for items that fit the brand, they're just not getting it. And after, a month or two, like, okay, I need this person in the arsenal for a while because I don't have this support right now, but like I'm going to offer them a 6-month contract, and at the end of that 6 months like I know that I'm going to be replacing them. So like understanding like you can do those things, right? Those 6-month
Hmm.
contracts are absolutely, it's called a contractor, it's not a full-time employee. They do need a contract, it's helpful to have. And you can renew it if you want to, but like again, there are baby steps and ways of getting support in your business without hiring a full-time employee, but the point of having somebody around all the time is that you then are able to offload tasks that are not part of your zone of genius, give you more time, give you more freedom, and ultimately give you more money. And
Yeah.
so, okay, so that's company culture.
Yeah.
Um, the hire before you're ready. So I was saying, like, when you're slow, it's a great time to start looking for somebody. It's sort of like if you didn't own a company and you were an employee somewhere, when's the best time to look for a job? when you don't need one. It goes
I know.
the
It's so
same is true.
counterintuitive, and um you're gonna have a fair amount of mental resistance potentially.
Yes, and that's where the mindset work comes in because I think if you prepare yourself idea of scarcity and lack, what happens when we think about hiring somebody? How do I pay them? You're assuming that the amount of work you would have would stay the same. And the reality is that when you start offloading those tasks, you are then available for more high level work. And guess what happens? More high level work comes in. The universe does not like negative space, right? It does
Right.
not like the vacuum. So
And
if
but that's a
suddenly
good point because that's that barrier to fear
yeah,
that
yeah,
can feel like crossing a chasm or jumping off of a cliff and perhaps dying on the way
yeah,
down.
yeah, and what
The
I
level of
love
intensity.
yeah, what I love is the idea that if you jump off the cliff, you build your wings on the way down.
Mhm.
There's no death at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Like
And that's a mindset that you, Andy, have taken a really long time to cultivate
100%. And
inside
I
of your nervous system and myself included.
let me be clear that I'm still cultivating it. It's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
one and
You have
done,
to
it's an
refresh your
exercise.
mind every single day. It's like saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
I got six-pack abs once." Well, you have to stay on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that there's this term, the agility term that and like the pivoting and all of that. These are all components of the same thing. It's keeping your mind flexible so that you are able to cope, right? So trauma, I recently heard this and it was so illuminating, but trauma is actually something that happens to us when we don't have coping mechanisms to deal with it. So
Yeah.
anything can be traumatic,
Right.
which I found fascinating. I mean, I knew that like levels of trauma and all of that, but the reality is that it's traumatic when you do way to deal with whatever is going on. And
Mhm.
so trauma can happen in like all these unexpected ways and places. And so when we have a little bit more flexibility in our point of view and perspective, I think
Mhm.
trauma has less of an appear makes less of an appearance because there is like, oh, I might not know right now, but I actually could go get some tools. I could call
Yeah.
somebody who could help me. Um, so knowing that you have access to tools, even if you don't have the tools, is a way of responding to
Well,
trauma
basically
versus
what you just said is responding the trauma response is because I don't have tools.
the trauma response is because I don't have tools, but if you allow for trauma might come and I am willing to figure out what the tools are, like it might take me a minute,
Yeah.
but I am capable.
Yep.
So I am becoming trauma averse because I am willing to allow for the fact that I might not know how to deal with everything, but I know that I could deal with anything.
Yeah.
That's the
And that's
difference.
such a great mindset to have is how you talk to yourself like she
Hmm.
just did there because that is the make it or break it moment. You could have gone in the other direction in the way that you talk to yourself negatively.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know that when we talk to ourselves negatively, we could spend, I mean, years going down that road before we
Yep.
get back
Yep.
on. So that's why we talk so much about the mindset.
Yeah, it's a super important part. I think any business owner that's not doing mindset work is probably creating a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Um, and again, like this is not a poo-pooing. Like if you don't do terrible business owner, not at all. You might be running a rocking good business, but this is a way of supporting your business and yourself that will lead to again more peace, more profit, and maybe even more purpose. So it's just it's a tool that we find incredibly valuable. And also when you're leading a team and you have a set of, like, I don't know what's going to happen in this job, like they're all a little unpredictable, right? There's always
Yeah,
some,
they are for sure. Yeah.
but you're the leader and you have I don't know if I can deal with with this right now, but I know I can deal with it at some point. Like, I
Yeah.
might have to go deep into the toolbox. I may have to phone a friend. I may have to consult a professional. There's like a bunch of different things, but those are the tools I'm going to start with
Yeah.
versus like, oh shit, I'm in overwhelm and now I don't have any tools. I've forgotten everything and I'm just freaking out. That's
Yeah.
probably not
Well,
a
the most important thing is like, and that's why we study so many successful people and successful business people, is because they all say that one of the things that makes them extremely successful in any industry is they are willing to admit what they don't know.
yes. Yes.
Period. So
Yep.
there's these very simple like unlocks that successful people just automatically have and know. And it's almost like the opposite is true if you're kind of coming from like an employee mindset. And
Yep.
the other thing about mindset is when we look at all that really famous athletes who are winning competitions and, basketball and baseball and football, all soccer, all these people who are competing, they all have mindset coaches, all of them. And so it's always curious to me why that concept and just being the idea of being coached. Also like being coached obviously as an athlete in terms of what you're actually doing on the team, but they also do all the mindset psychology stuff too. And so I never understand why those ideas sort of drop off for other people, and it's this thing like, "Oh, I need a coach. Why do you need a coach?" And it's like this weird, there's sort of like stigma around it or something. And I'm just here to say, like, I mean, they're doing it and we're watching them performing at, peak levels. So
Yep.
why wouldn't we do it too?
Yeah, I think it's a
Like
really
when
good
someone
point.
goes to the Olympics, I guarantee they have worked on their mindset, manifesting, visualization, all this stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think that, all of that is to say mindset when you're going into this phase of adding team members is really important because I think most of us have had these thoughts of like, how do I pay for this person? They pay for themselves, right? They're billable. You just add them to the billing sheet. Um,
Yeah.
so that that's a pretty easy one, although I've dealt with it myself where it's just been like, I need to make this amount of money and then I'm paying this person this amount of money. And the reality is that I can a team member and then that means that I'm making more. And also the
Yep.
billing rate that you're billing the person out and what they're actually making is generally 3/4 to 1/4. So they're making 25% of that billing rate. Um, and then obviously raises and things like that, but you give your employee a raise or your contractor a raise, your billing rate goes up. Um,
Hmm.
and so it's your business. That's a helpful differentiation. And that money's not coming out of your pocket. They are generating their own salary.
Yeah.
So it's a really
Well, I
important
think the
thing.
second part of that too is that you get stuck, the sticky wicket there is then the brain goes to, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have to spend so much time, A, training them, and
Yeah.
B, I am terrible at delegating, I hate delegating," or whatever your story is about delegating. There's all that resistance, I think, kinda lurking behind this next layer.
Oh, I can tell you what my story is behind that. And it is
Mhm.
this: I can just do it faster if I do it myself.
Yeah.
Right? Like
There it
that's always the
is.
story. Um, and what I had to break down for myself, I cannot do everything. And the other piece of that is I don't want to.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to be doing everything in my business. There are certainly things, again, zone of genius that are not my zone of genius. And while it would take me longer to explain the task than to just do the task, if I'm willing to sit and explain it, and it might take 3 or 4 times for this person to pick it up, um, that 3 or 4 hours that I spent delegating and giving this person something to do is 300 to 400 hours. I never have to do that thing again. Right? Like,
Yeah,
and
and then when you back it up with having a system for training,
yes. Yes.
you're able to leverage and
Yes.
not have to remember, "Oh, did I teach them this or that? Did I remember?" You know, well, there's a system for that that we have.
Yeah. So it's pretty critical, but I think that
Mhm.
the training part, I'm not gonna lie, it's one of the more painful processes. And then this is also why I think people again, know a lot of designers and their intern out of college, she spent 6 months and was like, "Thanks so much. I'm gonna go travel now." And my friend was like, "What? Go travel now?" And it was, you spend all this time, like, you've invested in this person, you want them to invest in your company. So, and she thought she had done everything right, and I honestly don't think
Mhm.
she did anything wrong, other than level of commitment for this young person who had just graduated from college, um, and decided that her time would be better spent traveling than working in this industry at the moment. So it's not, but those things are so costly because you've now invested all of your time into this person. They now have a skill set that when she comes back from traveling, she could take to any other office if she chooses. Employee retention is really important. And part of that is, again, it goes right back to your company culture. Like, you want to cultivate a place to work that people don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's a great way of
Um,
putting it.
and I think it is, maybe tougher to compete with a European adventure or a worldwide global extravaganza. So, um, plenty of offices that do cultivate culture where people want to work, make yours one of those places
Well, and I
because
think part of that would have been, like, finding out where's this person at, if they're young and stuff, you're gonna be like, have a real conversation with them, like, you might have been able to glean that information already.
possibly, yeah. I mean, what was, I think, a little bit shocking in this scenario was she'd been working there for design school and then, was looking at working at other firms as well. It wasn't just staying at this firm where she had
Mhm,
interned.
mhm,
And so, I think that the designer really did think that she was serious about having a job, and I think maybe it was the reality of like, "Oh, now you've graduated from college."
mhm,
She gave her more money, and a real salary and benefits, and also a lot more responsibility, and I think
mhm.
that that person was hard to
Yeah,
tell,
and that's maybe the expectation with a younger person as well, is that they are gonna perhaps, be bouncing around a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. And we all know, the days of the 50 years at one job and then
Mhm.
retiring with a golden coffee cup and a pension just don't exist anymore. It's not
Yeah.
a thing. And that designers actually do change 5 to 6 times within their career. And
Mhm,
so if you meet somebody that has some longevity someplace, it's really pretty amazing. Look at that company's, if you're wanting to understand how a company keeps their employees, there are plenty of designers that have high turnover. Why?
mhm.
Right? And then
Yeah,
there are
for
other
sure.
design firms that don't have high. Why?
Yep.
Second category because um, I and I also this is something that, I've experienced in a couple of different job situations, designers often have big egos, and big egos often come with, some fairly abusive behavior, and, that is something in our industry that is challenging.
Mhm,
Um lot of people have either left offices or started their own company simply because they decided that that level of abuse was inappropriate and unacceptable. And they're 100% right. Um, and so, but that's if you're looking at an office with high turnover, that might be one of the scenarios.
mhm.
Poor pay or poor benefits could be another situation. So there's a lot to look at, but 100% when you start your business, when you're getting all the pieces and you're figuring it all out and like also deciding projects. So it's no small task here. Um,
Yeah. It's
right?
almost the same thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean,
Hiring people and hiring clients.
yes.
Similar
Yes.
study of psychology, and one of the things that I like, and I like this anyways just personally because I like psychology, I like knowing what's going on with people, all of that. But Gary Vaynerchuk, he's a big business man, self-made man, and he has, I'm sure, more than he has like 600 employees. He probably has more than that by now, but I used to follow his content quite a bit because he trains a lot on business stuff. And he hit one of his philosophies is to always find out, like, at least know like one personal detail about the person. I mean, this is a big company, so like maybe for these smaller companies, you probably know more than one personal detail about the person, but you want to have like a little bit of a personal connection with them so they feel seen and heard. And then also like to really to have part of your talks like, what are you doing with your life? Like, don't avoid that subject just because it's like not within the company itself, because that person has other aspirations, like we all do. And so find out what they are, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Don't like let it go. I feel like I remember filling out those job review forms and it was like your 2 year and 5 year goals. And of course, most people leave off the other cool thing that you also want to do because you just think, oh, well, it's not directly related to this company. But I
Hmm.
think his point, and I appreciated it, is that no, go ahead and find out, like, do they wanna go and, like, make movies someday? Like, what do they wanna do? Because, A, that passion will also, like, I actually just met someone, who's really interested in movies, and it was outside of what she does for her work, but it taught me, like, "Oh, gosh, she's a visual person. She's could be good at visual storytelling. Well, I could put her in charge of my social media." And you start to see how when you it's sort of like you want to get to know people outside of just like, can you pick sofa fabrics and put colors together? Like, you want to know who they are and what
Hmm.
these other things are that they're going to want to do, because A, you can make it a win-win inside the company itself
Absolutely.
and what you guys are doing. And like, I mean, really, and that's going back to the zone of genius thing. And then when you know people on that level, you can really fine tune what they're doing for you, which is super cool too.
Yeah.
And then you're not in the dark about like, yeah, maybe someday they will go and like, make films.
People have a lot of potential outside of perhaps the job that they're applying for. And like those aspirations might, like if someone comes in as a junior designer, they most likely have aspirations to be you one day. And there's nothing wrong with that. You also had aspirations to be you one day, whether you realized it or not.
Yeah.
Um, and and maybe the position of how you got there is different. Are you going to be looking for someone roughly every 2 years?
Hmm.
Like these are important things to know about your business and how quickly you want to grow and how to find the right fit, because again, like this is training and there is not going to be a junior designer for very long. They're going to learn a whole lot on the job in your company, and they're going to be ready for more responsibility. So as
Yeah.
as their skill set grows, like, do you have another opening for them? Are you willing to grow your company so that there can be a new junior designer hire that person trains, and then that person steps into, an intermediate or lead design
Hmm.
where you've just doubled the capability of your firm to take on that number of projects, because now you know
Yeah.
that this person has the ability to run from beginning to end. Like those are all questions I would be asking as you're kind of putting all of this together, because you want to understand, in 2 years, like full on knowing that people most of the time, like it's not just about survival, right? We want to have a job for survival to pay our bills. And then our work is generally like one of the more fulfilling things that we do. Some people have the mentality of like, I'm going to work and that's funding my life. My life happens outside of my office. That's not true for me. My life happens inside of my office just as much as it happens outside of my office. It affects me equally, if not greater, in moments. And I I want to make sure that my living is personally fulfilling. And so, these are questions as you are building your business, your brand, and how many people are you going to be training or as you go through your business, and just have those expectations. Like, just be really honest with yourself. It's not the end of the world if you have to train a new assistant in 2 years, or you ask the person that you train to stay on for a month, knowing like they're looking for other work or whatever. And you know that because you've had a conversation. Listen, you're talented. I know you want to move up. I don't have a spot for you. You're probably going to start looking for something else. Would you be willing to train your replacement?
Mhm. Yeah.
Sure. Right? Like
And
that's a
it's all
very
goes back to,
kind.
like, creating a healthy work environment, which is wonderful for everybody, and then also this idea of, like, sort of like mentorship because we all get older
Yep.
and we can move on, and we're gonna wanna inform and educate those under us
Yep.
and let them be inspired to grow and do things, and then whether they stay within the company and they move through it with you, and that's great, or they, of course, maybe move on. Either way, it's like a win-win because now you're creating a good reputation out on the street. So they do
Absolutely.
move on, right? And then they recommend you to their friend or somebody else who can go work there for you. And it gets like big out into your reputation. Or maybe they recommend a project to you. So
Yeah.
you can see there's like so many different sides of, why to truly embrace like a very positive uplifting, mentoring, educational work environment. Like, so this one guy I was listening to, what did he say? He was saying, work hard in your business, you can make some money, but if you work harder on yourself, you can make a fortune.
Yes. Love
And
that.
he was basically saying take a way more time to work on yourself and the psychology. Of course, that's what we're talking about here, and we want you, the business owner, to do that too, but why not do that for help your employees do that. They don't know how to, a lot of times they don't know how to do it for themselves. So it's kind of like a win-win-win, like we always talk about. You win, they win, and the clients win.
Yeah.
So because when people are happier, they do more work and they do it faster. I know when I'm happier, I get things done like very quickly.
Well, and you're more attentive to detail, you wanna do a better job. Like, I always tell clients, when they're trying to pick a contractor, please don't pick the one that has the best price unless the most cared for, because they're gonna be working on your house for, like, 6 to 9 months, maybe more, and, you're gonna be seeing them all the time, and if you don't have a good relationship with them, I guarantee you, like, I had a client one time who, was fairly contentious, and it was there was a lot of back and forth, and these guys were not doing a good job, and
Hmm.
they went in her bathroom and left a nice little present and didn't flush, and she was like, "Can you believe?" And I was like, "Well, I think they just sent you a message." And I'm
Ah,
pretty sure they're not coming back.
yeah, they
um
definitely sent a message.
yeah, but you don't, like, you want to have great relationships. Again, like, I can't
Yeah,
stress this enough, like, about relationships. So it's a relationship with yourself first. It's relationships with clients that are healthy and productive, relationships with staff that are easy and fun. And again, like, when you have to give someone bad news, whether it's a
yeah,
client or an employee, it comes it's so much softer and easier when it comes from someone that cares about you, right?
yeah,
And so I think all of this is super helpful in terms of like the right fit, but sort of who do you hire first is maybe a great segue into, kind of our wrap up at the end of this discussion, because I
yeah. I
think,
would say that. I mean, and we also need to talk about delegating, but I
oh
would
yeah.
say that a junior designer or a junior assistant and a bookkeeper might be, or someone to do the drafting. Those three areas might be the first types of hires.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, identify what your skill set is again. So this is going back to that zone of genius download.
Hmm.
So what are your skill set? What are the ones that are in your zone of genius? What are the ones that are not in your zone of genius? And then what are the things you absolutely don't want to even touch in your business.
Mhm.
The ones that you don't wanna touch are, I would say, your first hire, first or second hire, and again, these could be fractional positions, like, you don't
Yeah, and
necessarily, like,
marketing too.
well, and, like, the bookkeeper spends a couple of hours in the business a month, to be honest.
Right.
I'm like, I have a
Yeah, it
remote bookkeeper.
does.
We've only met on Zoom, and she's fabulous, but we don't interact every day.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
couple hours here and there,
yeah, so
even just to kick it off.
while I really like her and I really appreciate her, trust that she knows what she's doing because she came highly recommended from my accountant and they work together. So that's partially why she's my bookkeeper. Um, but that is like a less of a intense all the questions because I know she has the right skill set. She owns her own business. She's doing that thing 100% of the time because either she enjoys it or she's really good at it, or hopefully both. Um, but she's somebody that's influence in the office versus like the junior designer is the one I'm gonna like ask a bunch of questions of. The assistant is the one I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions in that interview to make sure that they're getting my vibe and like what I need on the regular. And so those are also important distinctions to understand. Like if you have an expediter in your business because you are ordering a boatload of items frequently and you're like, "Oh, I really need somebody to help." That person may be remote, right? And if all they're
Mhm.
doing is like if you're putting in all the purchase orders together, but then they're like doing all the ordering, tracking, and then status at the receiver, like, did it come in okay? Is it chipped, not chipped? Is it in great condition? Can we deliver it? Blah, blah, blah. Like, again, that person, you just need to know they're capable.
Mhm.
So there are some hires and again fractional. So like that might only be a 15-hour a week job for somebody. They might do it for three other people to make up all those hours. And then, it's your like hard part-time. When I say hard part-time, it's like the 30-hour, 20 to 30-hour a week person is like the one you're going to interact with the most.
Yeah.
So talk more about delegating because I'm
Yeah, the
go for it.
delegation space is usually an area that a lot of lead designers and owners of companies struggle with the most because you do need to have a lot of patience. But you also need to have like a good system as to how you delegate it. And so Andy and I do have a system for that. It comes down to having a simple and clear cut way of just telling them what to do. And even things like I've created for other companies, a book where it says, we love this and we don't love that. And so that way they know right off the bat, a junior person can see like the type of fabrics that you want them to use, the type of fabrics that you want them to stay away from, the type of dining chairs that you tend to like, the type of whatever that you tend to like. Like give them some parameters and that can be a whole system that you put into place. Obviously there's a lot of communication that goes into delegating and I would say most people feel like they don't have time and so it's this burden. And so you do have to invest time up front. But if you have a system and you use it and it's a good system, and we do have a lot of recommendations that we can give you on that, that takes the guesswork out of trying to remember, did I communicate everything?
Yeah.
But go ahead and you do have to put like a little bit of a teacher hat on, being patient. And the other thing is, I learned that you expect the person to give you like maybe 75% of what you need. So if you give them whatever project to work on, find these furniture pieces for this living room, like expect it to come back like maybe around 70 to 75% of the way that you would want it. So no one's going to give you 100% because we can't read your mind. But like if they're in the upper space of 100, like that's good. That's good. And I was telling Andy this recently. Like sometimes my assistant will pick, so a bunch of I have her put a bunch of side tables, a bunch of lamps, a bunch of this, a bunch of that on the board that we use to design on, and I mean, sometimes I'm like, "No, no, 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 no," of what she put, but my energy immediately shifts in that moment, and it makes me remember, oh, you know what, that reminds me, there's this table over da 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 da, go get that one. And then in that moment, we figured it out. So I didn't get mad that she didn't know, or, whatever. I still got the solution. So I really want to encourage people to think of it that way. Um, and then the more that you retain people, you learn to delegate, you learn to have patience, you have a system for communicating and training them. And we do offer all of that as well, by the way. But retaining those people, because if there is high turnover, companies tend to spend maybe twice as much as the price of the person's salary getting the new person onboarded and finding them and everything that goes into it. So
Yep.
when you think of things that way, it really makes you embrace, like, I'm really going to do a good job delegating.
I think too that because I mean I struggle with delegating again. I mentioned like the resistance around I could just do this faster than they could. But again, if that's my mindset in a moment, fine, but if that's my mindset all the time, I'm shooting myself in the foot, right? Like I want to be able to do other higher level tasks and leave this other stuff to someone else. Once I train them, it's done. And so one of the things we realize is like training in this business is so intense, and we really have been thinking about ways of how do we make it a little bit easier, because it's not like somebody goes to school to get these skills. You might learn how to do 3D rendering. There's all these other software pieces that people are using, and they're coming with these great skill sets. But like, how do you talk to a vendor? How do you ask for the amount of fabric that you need in the terms and language that those vendors understand? How do you read a floor plan? How do you give instructions to the cabinet maker? Right, there's all these very technical, you have to make sure that they're doing it correctly. And so part of our manual, when we expand it early next year, is the video training. So you could actually download part of the manual and have somebody watch the training. So it's similar to like IED or Studio Webware, where you're teaching that person how to use the software, where, as we go through our system and provide this information for new hires, that, it's like so valuable to be able to, here, new person, please sit down. This is how we expect, like, these are the standards that we use. This is the expectation that we want to see moving forward. Do it like this. People know when they receive communication that it's always going to be complete. Um, when you walk onto a job site with somebody, that they're going to be, they're there to learn, but they're coming in with a set of skills that are helpful because they understand how to measure a room.
Yeah.
Right? There are just a lot of pieces to the industry. Some of you may be not doing remodels, and you may be doing more furnishings and decorating. There's still a ton of information to understand on that side. And so there's two sections that we're developing, but it's a super exciting space, because I think this is one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs to develop, is setting aside the time to delegate and give it away, knowing that the person already has a fairly good grasp on how to do it. What such peace of mind.
Yeah. And a lot of
Well,
it's like, don't reinvent the wheel.
yeah, for sure.
Reinvent the wheel on your designs.
Yes, customize the crap out of those, but
And sometimes, and even that, sometimes I don't even advise on that. I mean, yes, get creative, and you don't want them to look this, but it's okay if you have a branded look also. People love that.
yeah.
But especially with your company inner workings and just the way you do paperwork and the way you do client quote or vendor quotes and even client quotes too, just all of it, the way the paperwork and the workflow and the schedule of the work and coming in and when do we have our meetings, just make all of that stuff like standardized. Like, we don't I have to make decisions about what color to put with what. I don't need to make a decision about the way my email signature looks, you know, like make
Yep.
everything standardized that you can is what we're going to say that a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Again, it's that like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs outfit choice, which is
Mhm.
the same thing every single day. Like those things free up mind space.
Mhm.
And that's what we're here again. How to put down the struggle. Like it doesn't all have to be a struggle. There's enough struggle is, and hopefully the struggle gets easier and easier. And I'm never gonna be the one to say that like this these systems and these tools and like the mindset and the manifesto are gonna take all your problems away. But what I would love for everyone to get to is a better class of problems. Like this is what we are looking for. I want to have like really great problems like, oh, I can't design that house in Hawaii because I've been asked to go to Mexico. Great, better class of problem right there, right?
Yeah.
Um, like not just well, I don't know, like how did you write it last time? Just do it that way. I can't find that email because I didn't file it in the right place, right?
Yeah.
Have
All
a
of that needs
filing.
to be standardized.
Yes. If you have a filing system and you have a template for the email and you have a template for the communication, for every single piece of the communication is really easy. And the filing system is super great. And 99.9 times, like when somebody's asked the correct questions, they reply with the correct answers.
Mhm.
Um, Not every time because there's certainly vendors that we're like, "Oh my god, why didn't you like you answered 3 of the 4 questions." But even that gets easier because you're like, "Hey, you missed this question." It gets highlighted in the email and it or like, "Oh, I forgot this," or,
Yeah.
so
One of my pet peeves is like when I ask a vendor for a price, I always say, "What's the price?" I don't know what the second question is, like something about the finish
lead
or,
time.
whatever. Maybe include the shipping and the da 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 da. But what is the lead time? And they leave the lead time off like 99% of the time. And it drives me crazy. I want the vendor to give me everything in one email. And then
Yeah.
now that one email that says 10 to 12 weeks is separate from the one that has all the pricing on it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing with your staff. We just had someone go on vacation and she said, "Oh, everything's in a we use Asana and all this stuff and da 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 and the credit card's in there." Well, the billing address wasn't with the credit card. So it wasn't in fact complete.
Oh,
And
geez.
so it's just really training people to always have a completion process or else, But yeah, that's what we're here for. And like you were saying, it's not about not having problems. It's about it's like armor. It's like a suit of armor. Like I am ready to go into battle and my armor is like really good. I've got some really good armor on. That's how things are going to get easier, not about thinking, "Oh, things are just going to magically be simple." No, that's not the way it works. So, I always just think of it as like, "Oh, if I have better armor on, things sure do get a lot easier."
Yeah, and I think, some of that comes with experience and some of it comes with, knowing where to ask, knowing who to ask. And so within this community, there will be some great ways of really arming yourself to really be ready for whatever's coming at you. Because this is not an easy business. It's just not. Like I would love to think that this is I'm in year 21 of being in the industry, and I still get surprised sometimes by things that people do, uh, the way that like something's delivered occasionally. I'm like, what? Where's the? I mean, that's a whole other diatribe, honestly. But I think what it always comes down to is that there's this human component. Like, if it was all um, mass produced by a machine, there would be very little flaws if like robots could deliver everything perfectly and like set it down super carefully, nothing would ever be broken. And right, like that's a utopia we just don't live. And I frankly don't want to live in that kind of environment where I love the handcrafted nature of our business. And but with that comes, very human mistakes and flaws and things like that. Um, And that's just the part where the mindset comes in, knowing that it's coming, but also like you get to decide how you deal with those things. And that is the beauty of, I think, a really great mindset is in that decision point. Is it a problem or is it just something you're aware of?
Yeah.
You could argue that those are the same thing, and I would say massively different. Like that language matters and how you think about it matters. And so,
Mhm.
like everything else, how you think about your business matters, how you think about hiring matters, how you think about purchasing matters, how you, right? So anything that you can go, if you're like, "Ooh, I have a bad attitude about that," like give it to somebody else.
Well, the one thing that you can change is the way that you act.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
It's
change
the
other
attitude.
people, you can't change the world,
Nope.
you can't change the fact that you're gonna live and you're gonna die. You can change the way you respond and the way you act, and that is almost all comes from the way that you think, which is mindset.
Yep. Yep.
So
So
it literally is the most important, valuable tool that you have in your hands.
yeah, it is the
And that's
game
why we
changer.
talk about it all the time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's the game changer. Um, But thanks for listening. I think this has been super helpful. And if you want to head over to the website, there is best questions to ask potential hires that you can tweak to suit yourself. But, interesting, thought provoking, kind of getting into some nitty gritty ways of finding out information about somebody as both of you so that you can be as open as possible during that process. 'Cause I think that's where true communication starts to happen when we're nervous around things. It makes it really challenging to see who someone really is. And
Yeah.
so breaking down some of the barriers around the standard interview and asking questions that are more engaging and it will give them some insight into you. So check it out and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening and being part of our community. Speaking of community, please head over to our website and sign up for podcast alerts and blog posts. And if you're looking for more resources to uplevel your business, create more time in your schedule, and improve your profits, we have a blueprint for your success that covers mindset, systems, business, teams, and tools. Think of us as your unaccredited university. Visit us at under-the-fringe.com and tune in next week for our next deep dive on creating more freedom and less struggle.